We now turn to a tragic story from the Eastern Cape where a 9-year-old boy died after allegedly consuming poison while searching for food. This has reignited calls for urgent action to address hunger in the province. Joining us is Athol Trollip, ActionSA Eastern Cape Leader. Athol, thank you for being with us. So let's start with your reaction to this heartbreaking incident.
Well, good afternoon. You asked me how my 2025 had started, and I said not bad. And when I reflected on my response to you, I just thought how unimaginably terrible and traumatic the Willard family's 2025 has started. I mean, it is just the most tragic story to hear. And when I listened to the interview with the family members, I was just absolutely shocked and devastated.
Now, what immediate steps can be taken to prevent similar tragedies in the future and around the Eastern Cape in particular?
Well, look, I just think there's so many things that come out of this tragic story. First of all, you know, the story is based on a family being forced to have to exist and live out of people's waste. So this family from a township in Nelson Mandela Bay called Motherwell were forced to have to go out every Tuesday when it was Refuse Day in the nearby Blue Water Bay suburb to go and forage amongst the refuse bags to see what they could glean out of those refuse bags to take home for their family. And the first thing that struck me was that the father said he'd lost his job recently and he had no income. And as a father, he had the responsibility of trying to find food for his family. So I want to urge South Africans to put themselves in the shoes of Mr. Willard, who's the head of a household, who live in just the most terrible informal situation. He lost his job and now has to scavenge in people's refuse to try and find food to take home. So that is the first thing that struck me, is we've got too many South Africans out of work or losing their jobs. And secondly, he was scavenging with his children or trying to glean food out of refuse bags with his children. Now, imagine how ignominious that must be as a father who wants to set an example for their children that he's going to give them a better future than what he's had to live through. And he had the terrible instance of his younger son, Alti, consuming something out of a bag of refuse that led to the loss of his life. And then my wife said to me, you know, imagine the people that discarded whatever that was in that bottle. Maybe they discarded it and put it in a bottle because it was a poisonous or a substance that they didn't want anyone to consume. And unwittingly, I think people throw stuff away in their garbage, not even stopping to think for a minute that people are going to go through that garbage and consume what you regard as refuse. So there are many, many stories to be learned from this tragic incident. Is that one, there should be more provision made for the discarding of dangerous and poisonous substances. I can just think in my own home, in my garage, I've got so many poisons that I use to spray insects and weedicides and those kind of things. And you just daren't discard that in your domestic refuse because people are going to go through there. So that's the first caution, to caution all South Africans not to discard any poisonous substances in their domestic refuse, and that there should be more points of disposal for such materials. And even canisters and things that contain these materials, one should never throw them away because people will use them unwittingly to put other substances therein. I was involved most of my life in the farming community, and the destruction of containers that have hazardous pesticides and chemicals is monitored very, very carefully. And if it's not carefully monitored, people unwittingly use those canisters to, you know, put water in or other substances. So there are just so many lessons to be learned there. But I think the most tragic of all is that we've got too many South Africans that have to feed their families out of other people's refuse.
Now, Athol, politics aside, have you or your party reached out to this family?
No, I haven't reached out to the family because, I listened to the interview in order to be able to communicate with you. And we will be reaching out to the family. But, they'll be inundated with so many people, after the fact. And I think what we need to do as responsible leaders in communities is to encourage people not to discard hazardous material and to be very aware that people do eke out an existence out of their refuse. And then obviously as lawmakers, and I'm a lawmaker, we need to make sure that we are taking care of people like Mr. Willard, who wants a job but lost a job and there has to provide for his family with 7 children without a job and living out of a refuse bag. Which brings me to the point that, I'd left active involvement in politics because I believed I'd done enough. And Mr. Herman Mashaba encouraged me when he asked me to come and join him to fix South Africa. I said to him, I've had enough. And his question to me was, have you done enough? Now, I reflected on that and I got back involved in politics. But this instance has really galvanized me to make me realize that people like myself and many others haven't done nearly enough. We need to make sure that refuse that is put out by people is taken to a refuse removal site to be processed, not for people to live off. And I've been shocked and deeply saddened by this horrific incident.
I think what's equally saddening is that whilst poisonous substances are dumped in bins and rubbish cans across the country and eventually consumed by individuals such as this young boy who lost his life, there's also a huge amount of food that goes to waste. Good food. Surely there should be conversations around that policy on how organizations are disposing of food that isn't necessarily bad food.
Yeah, I get that. I was also deeply touched by the interview with this family who said that there was another family from a different community that would bring this particular family food every day. And even though one of them was unemployed, they reached out and they were being generous and providing whatever they could provide to this family, which to me is the essence of Ubuntu. And I would encourage every single South African who is in a better position to make sure that they are helping another family that is less well off to make sure that they've got some food. And all of that starts with making sure that the people that work with you, that you give them what they deserve. If they're working for you, give them, as much as you can. I know there's a minimum wage, but that doesn't mean you only have to pay the minimum wage. And we as South Africans that are better off or more fortunate should each take the responsibility of looking after a family that is less fortunate or better off. And the only silver lining in this tragic story was that there was a family that was looking after the Willard family. And I want to pay great tribute to them and to compliment them and to say that they've inspired me to make sure that I do more to reach out to people who have less. And I know that every single day in South Africa, there are millions of South Africans who do go the extra mile to help people who are less fortunate. But the biggest responsibility lies with government. We need to fix our economy. We need to attract foreign direct investment. We need to have foreign policies and domestic policies that make that kind of investment a reality so that we can get more people into work. The fact of the matter is that we have an economy that's limping along really badly and nothing has improved with regard to our economy. We have a new government, 7 months old government, and we see no green shoots. We've seen no improvement. And this should be an inspiration to the government to say, whatever we've done in the past, it's not enough. We need to do a whole lot more to make sure that South Africans like Mr. Willard and his 2 children do not have to go through other people's refuse to find something to eat. I think that's the most undignified existence. And I'm motivated now, and I hope more and more South Africans are equally motivated to make sure that we do everything in our power to start growing our economy and allowing more and more people to be in a position where they have dignity through employment and not the indignity of having to go through other people's refuse to find something to eat.
Don't think you could have said it better, Athol Trollip, Eastern Cape Leader, reacting to that tragic passing of the 9-year-old boy, but with it inspired to do more, as should all South Africans.